Welcome to the home for the Tentative Yogi, where you will learn tips, tricks, and tutorials on how to learn yoga safely from the foundation so that you can enjoy it for years to come. If you've ever been hesitant about learning yoga for whatever reason, or you've ever been in a class where you felt really lost, well, here's where you want to be. Welcome home. In this video, we are going to talk yoga blocks. How to buy them, what to look for, how to use them. In fact, I'm going to share with you my 5 favorite ways to use yoga blocks. So this video is part of a whole series I'm doing on yoga props, whether or not you need them, and also I've got videos on how to use straps and blankets. If you're still wondering, do I really need props? Then definitely check out this video where I talk about whether or not you need props and why I use them in my own practice. All right, so let's start with what blocks to buy. They come in all kinds of materials and in different sizes as well. So the most environmentally friendly block you can buy are the cork or the wooden blocks. I will tell you though, they are very heavy, and that can be an issue if you ever want to travel with your blocks, take them to class or traveling on a retreat somewhere, or in your practice, if you're leaning over to pick up your block and set it over onto the other side during a standing pose or something, that can actually be a problem, and you can start to feel it in your back after a while as well. So keep that in mind. These are foam and not environmentally friendly. I'm telling you right now, I know it. I bought them about 20 years ago, and this is what was available at the time. In an affordable way, I was buying for a yoga studio, and so I bought lots of them. But they're very firm, and which is good, and they're also thick. So another thing you want to watch for in your block is that it is a full, and I'm going to say 3 inches. If it's not 3 inches, I'll measure it and I'll let you know in the description. It's a full 3 inches, and there are ones that are much smaller, like 2 inches, and that will not be high enough. Okay, we often put them on the edge here, and then they're really wobbly. You're not going to get very much support. And if we use it this way, it's going to be much lower, and that is going to make a difference. Now, one last thing that you want to think about is I definitely recommend 2. There is something, it's just handy to have 2. Okay, just trust me. Lots of times you're going to want 2. It is not necessary. 1 is definitely enough, but 2 can be really handy, and I guarantee you will use 2 if you have them. All right, so what do we use a block for? Well, it's primarily to raise the floor. So sometimes we're raising the floor, we want to get a little higher because we can't quite get our hands down. Sometimes we do it to sit on to help us feel a little bit more comfortable. I want to share with you 5 different ways that I use the block. Just to give you some ideas to get you started. Now, the first way I use it, and probably the most common and the most important, is with standing poses. So, for example, as I go into Uttanasana with my tighter hamstrings, I can touch the floor with my knees bent, or I can have my legs straight and around. I can't quite reach the floor here, or I can use the block to get long through the spine. So I'm raising the floor. This is where you want to be, here or here, not here. So if you want to experience, I actually need to be a little higher. If you want to experience straight legs, then the block helps you. Now, I also use it in Trikonasana, and I know not everyone does. Maybe I'll do a video on why I like the block versus resting on the leg. Inherently, there's nothing dangerous about resting on the leg. But on a block, you're going to feel much more stable and rooted to the earth, which you want to do in this pose. So it's a really nice way to use the pose. And then, of course, coming into extended side angle and a whole variety of forward folds here in Prasarita. You can rest your head and get a feel of where that pose is going. So raising the floor for standing poses is one of the main ways that I use blocks. The next way I use a block is in lunge. And this is where you're probably going to need 2, but you can get away with 1. And this is going to be especially beneficial for someone who is a little overweight, has larger breasts, or has shorter arms. And it'll help them, or you, enjoy the pose a little bit more. So if you come into lunge, I'll do it without lunge or without the blocks. sometimes you find you can't reach the floor. You get people who are really uncomfortable, or I'll get people who can do the inside arm, but the outside arm they can't. And I'll change legs so you can really see that. Like they can't get the arm down because of either flesh, if you will, that's in the way, or they just can't get very deeply into the pose. Add the block, and now they can really experience the pose. Now that said, I also find people who are able to reach the floor really enjoy the blocks. I love the blocks. I often practice lunge this way because you get that extra space. Like it's easier to lift your knee behind you. It just feels really, really good. The next way I like to use the block is to sit on for different poses. One of the poses that is really wonderful with a block is Virasana. So Virasana is sitting between your feet down on the floor. Now this can wreak all sorts of havoc with knees when thighs don't internally rotate. If your thighs are free to internally rotate and you have the flexibility in your hip joint and your knee joint, you can sit in this pose comfortably. Most people cannot. But if you add to it a block between your feet, it becomes much more accessible. Maybe you need 2 blocks. It becomes much more accessible to those people who don't have the ability to get all the way to the floor. Getting all the way to the floor, if you don't have the ability, will injure the knee in an instant. So we want to be really careful with that, and that's when the block comes in very handy. Another one I like to use it for is Marichyasana 3. So this is a twist. And what's really nice about it is you can really feel your sit bones. It's harder than a squishy blanket, right? So you can really feel your sit bones. And when you come up and begin to twist, you can feel what the sit bones are doing, and you can root through the sit bones and get even longer through the pose as you twist. So sitting on the block is a great way to use it as well. Okay, so speaking of sitting on it, the next variation is also sitting on it, but it's more to help people in squat pose, which is not a seated pose. This is Malasana or Garland pose. And in order to really be in this pose, you have to be super open in your ankles, knees, and hips, and to be able to be in this position. A lot of people can't, but you can get really, really close. As you sit on the block, you can bring your legs out as far as you need to and get as close as you can with your flexibility and whatever limitations your body has, so you can really experience the pose in a beautiful way. Okay, I have one more use of block I want to share with you, and this is a little, I'll think of it as a bonus, a little treat. This is called Viparita Karani, and it's like feet up the wall in the middle of the room. Okay, so you're going to lie back, lift your hips like you're moving into bridge, put the block up underneath the hips, and then you bring the legs up. Now, I know, it does not look super comfortable, but it is. Unless you're really tight in your hamstrings, in which case you just want to have bent knees. And that just releases the lower back a little bit. Or you can have straight legs. It is so calming and so wonderful. I love to do this and then go right into Shavasana. It's just heavenly. Yet another use of your block. I hope you enjoyed this foray down the road of using a yoga block. It is such a wonderful tool to use to help you get more deeply into poses that your body just can't get into yet. Now, if you want to learn more about yoga props, definitely check out this video I did on yoga straps, this one I did on yoga blankets, and if you're still going, do I really need yoga blocks? Maybe, maybe not. Check out this video I did on why they can be beneficial, who needs them, and why you might not need them. Now, if you haven't yet, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel and check notifications so you find out every time I drop a new video. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope this helps you enjoy or learn more about your yoga props as you go forward in your own yoga journey. Namaste.